Merry Christmas, Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. The final week of shows for the year of our Lord 2024 is now underway. After this week, you won't see us again until January the 6th, although we are guest hosting for Glenn Beck on January the 3rd, just to give you guys a little taste of what is to come in 2025. I am Steve Deace. He's Todd Erzin. He's Aaron McIntyre. We're brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. If you have just decided there's no way out when it comes to that chronic pain that has just greatly decreased your quality of life, your mobility, and you're just thinking maybe that just happens when you get old. I mean, it does. That could be the case. Or it could just be you've got too much inflammation in your joints. And that's where Relief Factor comes in. It's the drug-free supplement created by doctors who can prescribe drugs, but they got tired of masking the pain with drugs, so they wanted to go after the pain with something else. And that something else is Relief Factor. Now, there's no guarantee here that it's going to work, but over the years, over 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start for just $20. And 70% of them saw such great results in 3 weeks or less that they stuck with the product long term. So what do you got to lose for just $20? Maybe give yourself the gift of a pain-free holiday season this Christmas. Just $20 to see if you don't see a difference in your pain threshold in 3 weeks or less when you go to ReliefFactor.com. Again, that's ReliefFactor.com. And speaking of Christmas, don't forget, a Blaze TV subscription is an excellent gift for maybe yourself or the America First Patriot that you love in your life. All right, gift that to them right now at blazetv.com/Deace and get $20 off your 2025 annual subscription to Blaze TV. $20 off right now. You'll get all kinds of exclusive content that we produce here on Blaze TV. $20 off at blazetv.com/Deace. Again, that's blazetv.com/Deace. All right, coming up on today's show, it's our final Ask Me Anything with questions from our Facebook followers. Our final one of 2024. That's coming up next hour. Bob Vander Plaats will join us here at the bottom of the hour. A couple of culture war. I mean, our state continues here to spend a good deal of time in the culture war spotlight nationally. So we'll get into a couple of those stories and try to close the loop on them with Bob here at the bottom of the hour. But first, here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Something Is Not Right. We have more questions than answers still about the mysterious drone sightings now happening in more places than just New Jersey. The Department of Defense held a joint presser with the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Federal Aviation Administration. The officials who spoke on behalf of those agencies were not identified. The joint staff acknowledged that there had been sightings of drones over 2 military installations in New Jersey, but said such sightings are typical. FBI, DHS, FAA, and Department of Defense said they've been unable to determine who is responsible for flying the drones, and there's no indication there are any adversary nations involved. And then this surfaced. This is air traffic control audio from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio from late last week, and it just speaks for itself.
Patterson Tower, Medflight 8, 1,900 feet, about 7 miles southwest of the field, like transition your Delta northeastbound.
Medflight 8 Patterson Tower, use extreme caution for heavy UAS movement on the base. Security forces is handling the situation. Suggest at or above 1700 AGL. Hey sir, you're still approved through our Class Delta. After you leave, Columbus is going to sterilize the Class Delta as of 0330 Zulu. Patterson Class Delta is closed after your transition. Sir, your transition is still approved. However, Patterson Class Delta is sterilized as of 0330 Zulu for heavy unknown UAS activity. Security forces is handling it, and Columbus is going to sterilize the airspace after you leave the Delta. All aircraft use extreme caution. Patterson Class Delta is now closed for heavy UAS activity.
Yeah, they shut down airspace over Columbus because of drones. New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith excoriated the Pentagon and other U.S. investigative agencies for failing to provide any answers on these drone sightings.
The massive invasion of drones observed and recorded by so many of our citizens, including and especially law enforcement and military personnel, many who are here. Is it unusual? Is he kidding? How does Secretary Mayorkas, who infamously told us for years that our southern border was secure and closed when we know it's not, and now insult our intelligence that we haven't seen anything unusual? This is usual? I don't think so.
I don't know what to tell you. Back in June of 2023, National Aerospace Research and Technology Park in New Jersey issued a press release announcing a testing and evaluation corridor for the development of uncrewed aerial systems or drones. The organization said the corridor stretches from Joint Base McGuire, Dix Lakehurst to Dover Air Force Base. Could be some of these drones are just government contractors testing out new drone capabilities, but why wouldn't authorities just say that? Nothing much with this story is adding up. Moving on, Donald Trump attended the Army-Navy game this weekend with several guests, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance also invited New York City subway hero Daniel Penny to the game as well. What a year for that young man. ABC News will pay $15 million to a quote-unquote presidential foundation and museum in a settlement reached with President-elect Donald Trump in his defamation suit against the network and anchor George Stephanopoulos. The settlement, which was filed publicly Saturday, reveals the network will also pay $1 million to Trump's attorney's fees and will issue an apology. The suit stems from this interview with Congresswoman Nancy Mace from back in March, in which Stephanopoulos falsely claims Trump was liable for rape.
Asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape.
It was not a criminal court. This was a civil court. It was a civil court. And by the way, she joked about the judgment and what she was going to do with all that money, and I find that offensive.
Last week, Satanists in New Hampshire erected another satanic statue outside that state house. It lasted a few hours before somebody knocked it down and destroyed it. In Iowa, Satanists there had planned on setting up their statue to Baphomet, as they had done last year. But this time, Governor Kim Reynolds put the kibosh on the profane display. Reynolds said in a statement, quote, "Our state government is always going to be concerned about the well-being of children. The Iowa State Capitol complex is a place that is open to the public where children and families routinely visit. Because of this, the state's event policy takes into consideration conduct that would be harmful to minors. This satanic event, which specifically targets children, is harmful to minors, and so it was denied," end quote. Whoopi Goldberg doesn't know a lot of things, but one thing she knows the least about is insurance.
There are things we can fool with and things we can't. Healthcare is one of those things that you shouldn't be able to fool with. And insurance companies who you pay, I pay into my insurance, you pay into your insurance. I don't understand. If I don't go to the hospital for a whole year, where's my money? Why don't you give me the money back?
Checking in on Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson on Broadway. Yes, this is real.
Female empowerment. Sick.
Yes, a sitting Supreme Court justice has a cameo in a Broadway musical called And Juliet, billed as a queer twist on Romeo and Juliet. And finally, checking in on MSNBC after Trump was named Time's Person of the Year.
And let's remember who else has been given this title in years past in the same category. Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Ayatollah Khomeini, and Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, they've got nothing else. And that's what happened while we were away.
Whoopi Goldberg wants to know where her money goes when she pays into insurance and doesn't use it. That is the definition of insurance. I mean, that's why you pay into it, so it's there if you have to use it. I mean, isn't that the definition of insurance? Isn't that what it actually is? It's you pay into it so that it's there when you do have to use it. Isn't that why it's called insurance? Isn't that the definition of the term?
That is a case study in invincible ignorance, Steve.
It is. Absolutely is. Aaron's Montage, brought to you by our friends over at Angel Pictures. Their new movie coming out this Christmas, December 20th to be exact, called Homestead. What happens after a nuclear blast devastates LA and the West Coast. That's what this film is all about. It's very well acted as a group of people come together to try to salvage what's left of America as the government is in chaos. You will really enjoy this film, led by Neil McDonough and more. And if you pre-order your tickets right now at angel.com/Steve, you'll get entered in to a $300,000 giveaway. That includes a Bitcoin, a fully furnished tiny home from BoxHouse, and a custom Polaris OHV from Sparks Motors. Everything that you would need to start your own homestead in case people like Whoopi Goldberg get control of the country again. All right. So go to angel.com/Steve. Again, that's angel.com/Steve. Get your tickets there, pre-order there, and you'll be entered into the contest for the giveaway if you do at angel.com/Steve. Okay. I would like to read, I don't do this very often, but I would actually like to read the article that Aaron referenced at the top of his montage. Okay? I want to read it in context for our audience. And I just want you to listen to this. And understand this is from the official Department of Defense website on Saturday. All right? So this is from them. In recent weeks, a number of drones have been sighted over New Jersey, prompting concern and thousands of telephone calls to report them. Some of these drones have been sighted over Picatinny Arsenal and Naval Weapons Stations in Earl, both also in New Jersey. During an on-background telephone call today, officials from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the Joint Staff provided comment and answered questions from reporters about the drone sightings. A spokesperson from the Joint Staff acknowledged that there had been sightings of drones over 2 military installations in New Jersey, but said such sightings are typical. Quote, we have had confirmed sightings at these 2 places. This is not a new issue for us. We've had to deal with drone incursions over our bases for quite some time now. It's something that we routinely respond to in each and every case when reporting is cited. The spokesperson said military installations have means to detect and respond to such drones, and that security personnel are trained to identify, categorize, and employ those tools to keep drones from flying unauthorized over U.S. military bases. Right now, the FBI, DHS, FAA, and DOD have been unable to determine who is responsible for flying the drones, and there's no indication that there are adversary nations involved. How are those 2 statements true at the same time? Do you know? This is like Whoopi Goldberg's definition of insurance, right?
Going to be a lot of that.
I mean, if you don't know the origins, then how can you rule out an origin? Do you know? If you don't know an origin, how can you rule out an origin?
I've been through COVID, so man,
Exactly. All right. To date, we have no intelligence. We probably could just stop right there. We have no intelligence or observations that would indicate that they were aligned with a foreign actor or that they had malicious intent. But we don't know. See? They just answered the question I just asked. But we don't know. We have not been able to locate or identify the operators or the points of origin.
How long has this been going on for, Steve?
Weeks.
Yeah.
It's been going on for weeks. For weeks. The spokesperson said that the military has, quote, limited authorities, end quote, when it comes to conducting investigations off of military installations within the United States. And it also is prohibited from conducting intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance operations in the United States, which might be used to determine the origins of who might be flying the drones. But we do have 3-letter agencies that have such jurisdiction, like the FBI.
If they're busy, to be fair, Steve, they're busy rounding up grandmas at abortion clinics or who are rounding around the Capitol grounds on January 6th.
Yes. But the spokesperson also said those military installations have good relations with local law enforcement who can conduct investigations off the installation. We have to coordinate with law enforcement to try to do that, which we are doing, and we do that on a routine basis at nearly all of our locations. We have good relationships and excellent coordination, and we respond quickly to try to identify them. I love the close of this, though. The spokesperson also said the department is frustrated by the appearance of the drones. The main point is to deter the activity using some of our electronic means that can respond to most of these small commercial systems and deny them access to the airspace over our bases. We don't know what the activity is. We don't know. She repeated that twice. If it is criminal, we don't know. But I will tell you that it is irresponsible. Here on the military side, we are just as frustrated with the irresponsible nature of this activity. This defies logic and explanation. Aaron.
Yeah, and just as you were delivering that, we've gotten more clarity from Donald Trump on these drones than we've gotten from the United States government. He's holding a press conference right now. He said, quote, the government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. For some reason, they don't want to comment.
Over the weekend, a video went viral from a CEO of a drone manufacturing company. I had a little birdie, so I haven't fully committed COVID-like mental resources to this story yet. And given we're in the final week of the year, I probably won't be able to, because we just won't be here on the air to resolve any of this.
Can you imagine when you come back in January, though, after just diving deep into this hole?
I'm maybe down to 3 packs a day. I haven't shaved. Right? Sackcloth and ash has been worn. Yes.
Guys, I've seen things.
Exactly. All right. But I did, with everything that we have going on with the show to wrap it up for the year, the holidays with the family, I spent a few hours this weekend dipping my toe into the waters of COVID-like muckraking on this story, and talked to several people and sources of people I have that I know. And then I finally talked to our colleague. Well, he should be a colleague. He's not right now. I don't think. Is he a contributor yet? No.
I think so.
I'm going to put his hat in the ring. Not that I do the hiring and firing around here, but I think Steve Friend would be an excellent contributor to the place. But I did communicate with FBI whistleblower Steve Friend about this last night. But I wanted to talk to everybody else I know, and then I went to him at the end to see what he said. Okay? And one of the things I was told by a little birdie is that the CEO of this drone manufacturing company that put this video out that got millions of views before it got picked up by Joe Rogan. And then it got millions more if you're picked up by the closest show to Oprah we've had in North America since Oprah. And Joe Rogan tagged it with, "This is the first thing I've seen about these drones that makes me scared." And it was him proffering the theory that they're in search of a dirty bomb that has come over from since we had several that were lost. We couldn't find them all after the fall of the Soviet Union. It's presumed several of them were smuggled into Ukraine, and maybe one of them was brought over here as hostilities are escalating between the Russia and Davos, or the West. That's basically what Davos and the West are, one and the same now. And they're on the lookout for this. Now, this never made any sense to me, because I understand why, and maybe I didn't articulate this as I was asking follow-up questions about this over the weekend, but I understand why you'd only send the drones out to search for the radiation at night. I understand. That's the part I get. The part I don't get is, why aren't there visible maneuvers to what they're looking for during the day? So if the bomb goes off during the day, we're just all effed? Not to mention, if we're talking about a bomb going off in New Jersey, New York, you're talking about extensive eastern seaboard fallout. Extensive. Didn't we just play the Army-Navy game in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania? We had virtually the entire next generation of high command of two of our armed forces all assembled there. Oh, and the president-elect and the vice president were there too. So that never made any sense to me. Well, I had a little birdie tell me late last night that he knows for a fact this guy's an FBI informant. Sean Ryan, kind of a Joe Rogan kind of talk show host. If you don't know who that is, you will in the new year, because his show is like, blowing up. It's gone big bang. Sean Ryan, right before we went on the air, posted this on X. We've been in contact with this contractor, John Ferguson. I offered him a spot on the show. After my original post, a contact he had at FBI contacted me to give me a little more information on John, and I expressed I would at least need the source on how he came across this information, which he was unable to produce. Sounds like maybe Sean Ryan and I talked to the same person. Sean Ryan was told this guy's also an FBI informant. So then he wants to know. So what Sean wants to know is this: if he brings this guy on, is he gaslighting my own audience on behalf of the deep state? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what Sean is asking. So what's your source on this then? Okay. Due to unverified information, Sean goes on to say, I am unable to host him on this show. This does not mean he's not correct, and we informed him if he can in fact produce where his information came from, I would gladly reconsider and host him. In other words, prove to me that you didn't just post a video that just happened to go viral on behalf of the deep state and the FBI as their informant to drop this nugget into the ether.
Just to be clear, what this is basically saying is that guy might be Ray Epps.
that's essentially yes. And when I found this out, it was way past bedtime, so that's why I didn't ping you guys about it. Okay. And then I was just going to stun you guys with it on the show. And then my little birdie sent me Sean Ryan's post, which indicates to me he also spoke to Sean Ryan. Okay. And so that's why I'm sharing this with you now. I was just going to bring this up to you guys on the air and blow your minds with it. But Sean Ryan beat me to the punch. So credit to him. Okay.
Freaking amazing.
So
go ahead, Aaron.
The guy in Kansas might be an FBI informant.
Yes. And I think Sean Ryan thinks there's enough evidence. He trusts his source on this enough to say, hey, I need to know where you got your information from. Or because I don't want to be an indirect conduit here for your PSYOP, essentially. See, that thing, we already, and we have other elements that are that have been on the lookout for decades for these kinds of things like dirty bombs and everything else. I had another little birdie tell me that, you get this, ready for this one? I had another little birdie tell me that they thought it was actually timed for the fall of Syria, and that they thought the government would essentially try to create a PSYOP to make it look like Democrats had foiled a plot to smuggle biological weapons into the U.S. to pump up the Democratic Party through a politicized DOD right before Trump takes over. I had another little birdie tell me that. And again, I'm talking to people that I take seriously who are telling me things like this.
This is the exact thing I meant about pre-COVID, once transgenderism hit us across the head and it indicated it was here to stay. Why? Once we believe this, we'll believe in anything. Mm-hmm. Undergirding every specific thing, drones, whatever else is going on the news, is the overarching and undergirding battle for reality itself. You can't even know what facts you're supposed to be dealing with at any given time on any given issue.
So to that end, after hearing all of this, because what I wanted to do, I wanted to hear from everyone else, and then I was going to take it to Steve Friend at the end and get his take. So I did. Here is what Steve told me this morning. In fact, let me just do this. I want to make sure I don't embellish at all. I'm just going to read to you exactly what he wrote back to me when I checked with him. Exactly. Going to read it verbatim. So this is FBI whistleblower Steve Friend, just an American hero. And by the way, he's going to be on the year-end day scoop, our final episode of the year, him and Sarah Gonzalez, or second to last episode of the year. They're going to be on Thursday for the annual year-end day scoop, so looking forward to that. And Steve, remember, mentioned our show as one of the primary inspirations for why he finally had the courage and decided to come forward and tell the truth about what he knew about how politicized the FBI was from the inside. I'm just going to read this. You ready for this?
Probably not.
Talked with my buddy with 40 years intel experience in the Marines, Navy, NSA, and FBI. He is not prone to tinfoil hat theories. I mean, this guy's grizzled veteran. He's seen it all. Okay? He pokes holes in every potential explanation I asked him about, except for one. Are you ready for the one?
Lay it on us.
Sentient AI that our government lost control over and doesn't know how to respond. In other words, Skynet is possibly self-aware.
Terminator movie. Cool.
As I did all the mental math that at least I'm capable of on this, okay? I'm sure there are others who are capable of way better math on this mentally than I am, all right? I know more about this stuff as a baseline than I did about immunology and virology at the start of COVID, but I would have to get into like a crash course on this stuff like I did for COVID to get to the level of math that this story probably requires right now, okay? But the limited amount of mental math on this I am capable of. The only non-malevolent origin of this story that I can think of that makes all when you're trying to hack the safe, makes all the numbers click to open the safe.
By non-malevolent, you mean like accidental?
Yeah, something that wasn't an intentional of sinister origin, either from an adversary or our own government or something otherworldly from another dimension, okay?
So it accidentally escaped from my Wuhan lab.
So yes, this the only thing I could think of that doesn't intentionally have a malevolent origin is this one. And it would make a lot of their statements make sense. I mean, Todd, you and I grew up, shall we play a game? I mean, one of the most popular movies of our childhood was about this topic 40 years ago. War games. The only way to win the game is not to play. And a sentient AI, essentially, just decides to start World War III, right?
Yes.
Or at least we think. We're not sure. That's the plot of the film. Is this really happening or not? Or is it just a game of chess that he's provoking the Russians and the U.S. to launch against each other, right? Right. But that would make your Wright-Patterson Air Base audio make sense. That would make a lot of things make sense. And it would also explain why, well, it's not of adversarial. There's another reason they don't want to acknowledge if it's of an adversarial origin, because this government would be too gutless to want to respond. Kind of like Iran. Iran cannot just admit that Israel is just eliminating our high command in broad daylight, because if they did, in that honor culture, it would be expected that they would retaliate in some meaningful way, but they aren't capable of it. So they just have to eat. They just have to kind of eat it. You know what I'm saying? So with this government that we have, if it's China, they're in China's pocket. They're not going to respond in any meaningful way. So it'd be better just to sit there and look stupid rather than just admit to the world, hey, we're a bunch of cowards here and we can be used, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This hypothesis would explain, though, a lot of, because you certainly are not going to be eager to admit to the rest of the world. We have
meet Ultron.
Yes, exactly. We cannot control an element of our own armed forces. We cannot control this. So, and let me also add this too.
There's more.
There is. I talked to a buddy of mine who just retired this year. Son died. Son was a military hero, career military. He just retired this year. Analyst, okay? DOD intelligence analyst. All right. After I got this from Steve Friend, I sent this to him, and here's what he said back to me. That's actually not surprising if it's true. They knew that was a possibility, and some of our DOD officials even publicly admitted that. That's why at the Air Operations School I recently consulted, we were very leery of AI. We saw benefits in the Combat Plans Division with giving it our target nomination list in air operations directly and using AI to come up with a master air attack plan. But our greatest concern was using AI on the Combat Operations Division floor, which is the equivalent of NASA mission control. We could allow AI to come up with a dynamic target mission without giving it permission to execute it. But what if it went rogue on us, like HAL or War Games, and starts sending orders to hit targets on the no-strike list or restricted target list, or it comes up with its own targets? How would we control that? Feel free to use this info because none of it's actually classified, what I just told you.
I am struck by the fact that a year ago at this time, when we were doing our end of the year show, which we're about to do again, one of the last categories, I can't remember it, is you get your big prediction for the coming year. I can't remember the language you used for that category. It's one of the last ones. But my prediction was the rising prevalence of AI.
My question is, why have they not tried unplugging it and then plugging it?
Yes. Honestly, it's as good as anything at this point, apparently.
Thank you, Whoopi Goldberg. But this time you might be onto something. Yes.
We're trying to have a society here.
I don't know if Whoopi Goldberg wants to know why it's not working when I push the button to make it stop. Isn't that how it's supposed to work? And of course, the largely affluent crowd of white college-educated women applaud like the amiable dunces they are. More in a moment. So we are getting set for family movie night. We bring that back. The kids are out of the house mostly now, but we bring it back for Christmas time when we all get together each week. and do Christmas for family dinner on Sundays. And this week, A Christmas Carol is the movie that we're doing this week. So we're looking very forward to that. And if you love that story every bit as much as I do, it's one of the great stories in the history of Western literature. There is a brand new course right now being taught at Hillsdale College that you can take for free this Christmas season by Dwight Lindley. It's called Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, the free online course about literature's most famous miser and some of the themes that are contained therein. Again, you can register today for this free online course, enter into the world of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and see things anew and rediscover the joys we often overlook in daily life. Because really, if you've only seen the movie versions, there are several elements of the book that have never made it into any of the movie versions, except with one exception. The one that is a true, almost page-for-page adaptation is the Disney animated one with Jim Carrey that they did in 2009, which is brilliant and my favorite version, actually. So you can take this free course at daceforhillsdale.com. Start that free course today and at dace4FOR, daceforhillsdale.com. And in the immortal words of Tiny Tim, a Merry Christmas to us all. God bless us, everyone. And with that, let's welcome in our good friend, Bob Vander Plaats. Merry Christmas to you, Bob. This is the last time we're going to see you this year. How are you, man?
I'm doing very well. Merry Christmas to all of you guys as well. Blessed, highly favored, cup overflows, Steve. What a great time we're living in.
So,
pinch yourself stuff. This is the kind of stuff we've been waiting. We talk about. This is finally, people are out in front of you. That's kind of fun.
It is fun. I'm enjoying it, actually. Yes. So that's my grift. I enjoy it when people do things I agree with. That's my grift, apparently. Yes.
That's a pretty easy job.
It is. I like getting paid to do that much more than complaining about them not doing it.
Exactly.
All right. So let's talk about the fact our fair state continues to be in the culture war crosshairs. And one story that made national headlines at this time a year ago is the Church of Satan, under some, I would argue, misguided definition of religious liberty. I defy anybody to hop in the DeLorean and go find any of the founding fathers. Even Thomas Paine, the closest thing to a secular libertarian, Ayn Rand, and the founding fathers that we had, and go tell them that religious freedom means you can put up a statue to Satan. Let me tell you how they'd respond. They'd have you executed. It's not even a joke. You would be executed for that. And that was an argument that we had, and other states are now having across the fruited plain here this Christmas. All right? Except we're now not having it because our governor stepped in. Governor Reynolds denied it, refused it. And a buddy of mine was organizing pastors to go down there and protest this on Saturday. And we got word on Friday that Governor Reynolds was not going to permit that to be there this year. And he was very excited. I said, well, now y'all get together and just have a celebration. Now you don't have to protest. That's even better. All right. And I know from people I talk to, I'm sure you heard this too. You're closer to the governor even than I am. I had heard there were even the state attorney general and others, that State Attorney General Brenna Bird and others were telling her she had to put it up. We're going to lose in court. Who gives a flying flip about losing in court? Let's just do the right thing, and as opposed to game theorying out what courts may or may not say a year or two from now, once all this gets adjudicated, why not just do the right thing right now? And that appears to be exactly what Governor Reynolds did.
It is what she did, and obviously she didn't care about would she lose in court, and I think she wanted to have this debate in court, and she still might have that opportunity to have that debate in court. But when you take a look at it, and a little bit of free education for your viewers and listeners, government is an institution of God's. God's enemy is clearly Satan. And everybody knows, and this is spiritual warfare that's coming out from behind the curtain on center stage, saying this is spiritual warfare, and now you need to give me religious liberty just like you give God, even though it's his institution, and it's designed for the purpose of the pursuit of righteousness and of justice. And I come to steal, kill, and destroy everything that is righteous and that is just. So Kim Reynolds said, tell you what, I'm going to call their bluff. And you're not going to do that. And you may even say it's because of some code we had that it could be harmful to minors. It's not just harmful to minors, it's harmful to society. And even though, let's say Brenna Bird's right that you'd lose in court, which I don't believe you would yet. Let's say she's right and say you'd lose in court. I believe you would win by a large margin in the court of public opinion. And that's what she needs to worry about as well. But she did the right thing because it was right. She didn't do the right thing because it was expedient. She knew she was going to put basically her skin out there to do it, but she did it anyway. And frankly, then, Steve, what she did, she took all the consternation out of that Capitol.
Exactly.
All the consternation out of the state about what should happen and what shouldn't happen. She just made a decision. It's not happening under my watch. Move on. So then the pastors that Mike and others were organizing, our own Chuck Hurley was down at the Capitol, instead of braving an ice storm, and a lot of those pastors would have done, braved an ice storm to get to that Capitol. A, they didn't have to brave their own lives to get to the Capitol. And for the dozen or 24 that showed up, it's now praise and worship and celebrating the real meaning of Christmas. Jeez, there's no wonder why they decided to do this at Christmas time.
Nope.
And I used the argument. I said, so when we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, because that's a holiday, right?
We put up a display for the Klan.
Yeah, you put up a display for KKK. You guys going to allow that to happen?
That's
freedom
exactly
of
right.
speech, freedom of... You're not going to allow that to happen. You don't allow this garbage to happen either. Thank God for Kim Reynolds in taking a stand. Everybody that knows her, everybody that's got her contact, tweet, your Facebook, social media, give her a shout out, give her a thank you for doing the right thing.
Amen to every word. And so much of where we are is just because of a crisis of leadership. People will not step in. People will not say no. People will not say, here I stand, I can do no more. May God have mercy on my soul.
Yep.
And something that would have been an automatic, like, we're all old enough to remember when a Republican politician would have to buy somebody to do something like, hey, why don't you petition me for a satanic statue in an election year so I can refuse it and look great. I mean,
exactly.
This would have been like a grandstanding eye roller 20, 30 years ago.
Yep.
Now it's like a serious, we got to have a conference. We got to have an enclave to discuss these kinds of things. There is just a uniform crisis of leadership. People who will just simply say, my answer to that's going to be no. And then we'll see how you take your best shot. But my answer is going to be no. Yep. Much of what's happening to our culture would be alleviated if we had more men if fathers in the home, they would just say no. Yep. Take your best shot. People in leadership, comprehensively in the culture, they're just saying, my answer is going to be no on that. Do your worst. We just don't have a lot of people willing to say no.
Exactly. Matter of fact, Steve, when I talk to a lot of people who are either aspiring leaders or they're in our movement, they're part of our team, said leadership's not that difficult. You need to ask yourself, what would a good leader do right now? So if you're going to that porn site, you need to ask yourself, what would a good leader do right now? If you're flirtatious in a relationship, what would a good leader do right now? If it's putting a satanic display up in the Iowa Capitol and you're governor, what would a good leader do right now? And when you know the answer to what would a good leader do right now, then you do it. And then you lead. And our families will be better off, you'll be better off, our state will be better off, our country will be better off. But we need more people asking that question and forgetting about, well, what's the woke community going to do to me then if I don't do that?
What do people who already hate me, will never vote for me no matter what I do, will never support me no matter what I do? In other words, the contrast of Kim Reynolds and Caitlin Clark this last week, by the way.
Sure.
Let me try to, refashion my image with, a dress the likes of which you've never seen me in.
Yep.
Let me genuflect and claim that I still got everything. I earned it all, but I understand there's white privilege and I stand on the backs of giants, most of them black lesbians, and I'm very sorry I was born white and like dudes, okay? Meanwhile, Kim Reynolds doesn't even put out a press release.
No.
Doesn't even have a press conference, all right? Just goes, skadoosh, we're out of here, and hits the kill switch on the Satanists. The contrast there, to me, I find striking.
Yeah. And the other part of it is, I look back at Kim Reynolds' deal. I believe it was early in the week last week where she made the decision this thing is not going up in our Capitol. It's a done deal. Like you said, Steve, she didn't put out a press release, didn't do anything. I don't think it was actually, I'm going to take some credit, I don't think it was actually until I put out a tweet going, this is not on the public schedule. Where's the proof of all the hoopla? And now, then all of a sudden it came out that no, it's not happening. But she still hasn't, basically spiked the football in the end zone. It's the right thing to do. Move on. And that's what she's doing. Good for her. She should be governor again, by the way.
I agree. She should run again.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly. Is she going to do so?
I believe she, and you know what, Steve, whether it's the Forbes magazine saying she's the best fiscal governor in the country, whether it's the family leader saying she's the best governor in the country on our issues, showing common sense leadership like this, we better hope and pray she runs again. I hope she does. And I think she will.
Here's the thing. Who would be an obvious heir apparent if she doesn't run again?
You know, I don't...
Trying to think of who that is. If you and I could come up with a... Could you and I right now?
No, not yet. I mean, there's no doubt. I really believe that the Republican Party has a way deeper bench on a state level and on a federal level than the Democrat Party does. I don't know who the Democrats really have.
Well, there isn't a Democratic Party in Iowa right now.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you saw that we have supermajorities now in the state legislature, both House and Senate. And a lot of that's due to her bold and courageous leadership.
That's my thing.
They're rewarding her
if
for
it's
this.
not her, tell me who you can say right now is an elected office.
Yeah. We'll worry about that down the line because I just don't know who it is. I think she's going to run again, though. I think Iowans should reward her with a resounding win again.
All right. Let's talk about another woman from Iowa, Ann Selzer.
Somebody I have personal experience with.
Yes, you do. All right. She's back and gave an interview over the weekend and said this.
About what the motivation anybody thinks I had and would act on in such a public poll. I don't understand it. And the allegations I take very seriously. They're saying that this was election interference, which is a crime. So the idea that I intentionally set up to deliver this response when I've never done that before. I've had plenty of opportunities to do it. It's not my ethic. But to suggest without a single shred of evidence that I was in cahoots with somebody, I was being paid by somebody, it's all just kind of, it's hard to pay too much attention to it, except that they're accusing me of a crime.
So in the last hour, by the way, former President Donald Trump announced he's going to sue the Des Moines Register for that poll, by the way.
So she's going to find out real quick.
Yes. That discovery process could be a humdinger, as they used to say. All right. So 3 things about this, and then I want to get your reaction.
Sure.
All right. Ann missed your gubernatorial primary by about 20 points.
She had Branstad winning by 29. He won by 8, and only because the third party was propped up. So 21 points.
And this was the final primary poll 2 days before the
Sunday
vote.
Before the Tuesday.
Yes. So, I mean, that kind of a miss, is de facto voter suppression, manipulation, even if it's unintentional. I mean, people just want their votes. It's just human psychology. People want their votes to count, and you published a poll in the paper telling them my vote doesn't matter, so why even show up?
And Steve, because I played a part in it, we didn't make a lot of noise about it, but I got to tell you how many times I got it brought up to me. That suppressed the vote in your strong areas, because they thought, if you're going to get beat, why go out to vote anyhow? But I'm not even going to do this. I'm ticked off at the system. Why do it? So these polls do matter. Keep going.
So Ann has been very right. She was dead on. We were on the Huckabee campaign.
Yep.
She nailed that one perfectly. She was the only one that really saw the late surge for Rick Santorum. Okay.
Yep, I agree.
So there is evidence for why she has been given so much national acclaim as a great pollster. But then there are these 2 massive outliers. The Trump poll where she missed by 19 points, your primary that she missed by 20. These are statewide elections, guys.
Yeah.
This isn't, hey, 500 people showed up I didn't expect in a state legislative race and I blew it. This is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people are voting in these statewide elections. To miss by that level when you've been so right before, I think it does beg a question. How do you explain those outliers given your overall track record of success? Then one last thing, and then I'll turn it over to you. In the future, because of how prevalent betting markets are for politics now. So the day before Ann's poll, Kamala Harris was at 39 cents on the dollar in the betting markets. Within 24 hours, she was at 45 cents on the dollar. Given how many millions upon millions of dollars had already been bet into that market and that late in the game, this is the final days before the election, to move a market by 6 cents or 6 points that late is an incredible transfer of wealth. Do you know how many people probably hedged their bets right there and got out and made money just based off of her poll? Or how many people got in because of her poll thinking they would get ahead of the market and lost money? All right. So even if even if all her intentions were, I just sucked at this uniquely that bad, that day, that also effectively would have happened. I will predict in the future, Bob, we're going to see a scandal where there will be in the future some polling firm or pollster that will be discovered to plant, after establishing credibility, to plant outlier polls to manipulate markets so people can make a bunch of money off them. The betting market version of insider trading, essentially. Your thoughts?
Well, let me take number 3 first, the third point. I don't believe for a second Ann Selzer did anything to make people millions of dollars because of her poll. That said, who hired her to do the polling is the Des Moines Register. And in 2010, in the gubernatorial primary, which you referenced, Steve, that I was a part of, the Des Moines Register definitely wanted Terry Branstad to win that primary. And the reason is because I said on day one I'd issue an executive order that would reestablish marriage between one man and one woman until the people of Iowa had a chance to vote on it. They wanted nothing to do with Bob Vander Plaats. So whether it was a skewed poll or not on purpose, it gives people at least nefarious thinking about what's going on here. In this poll that she did with Donald Trump, the Register definitely wanted Kamala Harris to win that presidential election. And they wanted Iowa to be the lead in it. They wanted Iowa to make the news. That's why there gets to be nefarious thinking. Is it validating? We know this is exactly what she wanted to do? No, but it opens the door to ask a lot of questions. So when you're going, I'm mystified that people would even think this. Of course they're going to think, because you are way off. My guess is when you get the results of those polls, you had to think it. What the heck is going on here? If that's an accurate poll, what the heck is going on here? And I got to believe a pollster with that big of an outlier, what would I do? I'd go back in the field. I'd go back in the field to say, does this justify? Yes. Do I ask other questions?
Right on.
This is wrong. But everybody, every pollster I believed in, when that poll came out, they said there's no way that has credit. And you and I knew it had no credit as soon as the poll came out.
That discovery process is going to be a real humdinger. All right? Because were those conversations had? Were those emails exchanged? Should we publish this? Why would we go through with this? Did you check your work? How about, because here's the thing also, a poll, when Ann Selzer or Seltzer Water releases a poll, it is not the summation of all the people they contacted and what they thought. It is their weighted assessment of those results. Okay? That's what a pollster does. All right? They're not a surveyor, they're a pollster. They're putting their thumb on the scale to tell you what those results actually mean. 20 seconds, go ahead.
If I was counseling Ann Selzer right now, I'd say it's best to stay quiet and or say, hey, you were wrong, you missed it, and move on. Because now Trump's going to see you. Last thing, Steve, America, CNBC poll says, you know what? They're all optimistic about a Trump presidency. Christmas, that's where our real hope is. We want Trump to do well. Put your faith in Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Amen. And greetings. We're back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Todd, or he's Todd Erzin. I'm Steve Deace. He's Aaron McIntyre. We are whoever we want to be. It's the era of I identify as, after all, is it not? Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox, which you can take advantage of by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, Getter, TikTok. You can also, please do so, subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you are a listener to the podcast, thank you very much. Have you subscribed? Please do that. Hit that subscribe button, or on iTunes, follow. That way, every time we do a new episode, it shows up in your feed every single time. And then finally, if you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. If you haven't done that, we got so many of those this year. We greatly appreciate each and every single one, so thank you. This partner today, I'm going to specifically dedicate it to Whoopi Goldberg, because it sounds like she needs to call SelectQuote, one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience. They can help her understand how insurance works and where to get the best rates, because it sounds to me like she could use the help.
Can they? Are even they that good?
Well, they've helped 2 million customers. Let's put them to the test. See if they're worthy of a mention here on the Steve Deace Show. Can they even help Whoopi Goldberg? That's how you know they are worthy of the blaze. Yes. All right, but they have helped 2 million customers who are clearly smarter than Whoopi find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that might even cost you more and cover you less. While SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. And have you ever wondered about getting coverage, maybe with a pre-existing health condition? SelectQuote partners with carriers that provide policies for a variety of those as well. So if you got high blood pressure, diabetes, they can help. So get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/Steve. Go to SelectQuote.com/Steve today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/Steve. And with that, one final time here in 2024, going to say that a lot this week. It's our final broadcast week of the year. One final time here in the year of our Lord 2024, it is your turn to ask me anything. These are questions submitted by our audience over on Facebook. Todd has selected the questions that we're going to be answering. And then Aaron, you're going to read them off, and I'm going to find out what they are with the rest of the audience here in real time.
Yeah, so here's what happened. I forgot to prepare graphics for this because, as always, I'm busy up to the start of the show. I remembered that during the last break, and I was like, oh, man, I got to do all these graphics in 3 minutes. And Todd, as the show ombudsman, said, do you really, though? It's the last week of the year. The ombudsman gave me a papal dispensation, so I'm just going to read them today. Alex Pfeiffer says, how is it even possible that the entire Siberian Orchestra is trans?
That meme of Paulie Walnuts. There ain't no friggin' way the entire Siberian Orchestra is trans. It's just, that is great. Every time I see that, it makes me laugh out loud. I think it's absolutely hilarious. Well done.
Jennifer Graves says, why did I wake up today with Fauci did you know in my head?
Because it's the reason for the season. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. And it's the greatest thing this show has ever produced and probably will ever produce. I mean, I don't know that we'll ever have another moment in history combined with our show's unique leadership on said issue and then zero blanks given level of writing and production at the exact same time, right? I mean, that's a bouillabaisse right there. It comes along maybe once in a lifetime. That's Lennon McCartney sitting around reading a flyer for the circus that says being for the benefit of Mr. Kite. And out of that comes the entire idea of Sgt. Pepper's. Okay. It's that man right there. I mean, that moment may never, ever come again. Now, let me say this though. And all I'm going to say, this is all I'm going to say about it for now is this. Next year, I am coming forth with something to challenge that assertion. There is another sacred cow that needs to be skewered. And next year, I'm coming for it. And what I have planned, the likes of which has never been done before, what I'm going to do to this sacred cow. And that's all I'm going to say for now. That's all I'm going to say for now.
All right, Kyle Reed doesn't have a question. He just says, thanks to you in church today, we sang Christmas songs for worship. All I could hear was you singing the songs about COVID. I silently laughed out loud the whole time.
I didn't mean to ruin people's Christmas worship experience. My bad. I didn't want to do that, but I'm glad that you guys are doing Christmas hymns at church. I mean, that should be a staple this time of year. You can do all the other worship songs the rest of the year. Here, and can I be serious about that for just a second? Do you mind? Here's the thing that you have to remember, right? Paul makes it very clear that the confirmation of the Christian faith, the confirming fact of the Christian faith is the resurrection. Without the resurrection, we don't have a claim, or we don't have evidence to justify our truth claim. So therefore, if Christ be not raised, our preaching is in vain. We're all still dead in our sins. The confirmation, the confirming fact of Christianity is whether or not a dead man named Yeshua of Nazareth walked out of a tomb on the third day. But the basis of our faith is the incarnation. What is the resurrection, the confirming evidence of? The incarnation. That God came into the world. The only true living God came into the world. And dwelt with us. A light shining in the darkness. He left paradise to come here and live with and suffer with and on behalf of and for us. In fact, the term Antichrist, which gets thrown around a lot this day and age, and I don't blame anybody for doing so, given what we've witnessed in recent times, but that term in the scriptures actually originates, and the only time it's really referenced directly, probably much of what you know as you know of the Antichrist is actually from a man of lawlessness. Often that comes from Paul in a letter that he wrote to the Thessalonians, and then what also is referenced by the Apostle John. I think is it Revelation? Is that 14 about the beast, to the number of the beast? Is it somewhere in there? Okay,
I don't remember the chapter.
But the term itself in the Bible is only mentioned in one context, the term itself. And it's also from the Apostle John. He writes a few small letters or epistles at the end of the New Testament. And in one of them, he mentioned that in one of them, he gives the term Antichrist. And then he defines it. He tells us who's an Antichrist. What does he say? Someone who denies that Jesus came, God came in the flesh. And therefore rose again in the flesh. Someone who denies the incarnation. That's what John says. So the confirming fact of the faith is the resurrection. But we then have to ask ourselves, and I've said that on the show for many years, right? We have to ask ourselves, though, what is that evidence confirming? What's the charge? What's the proposition? The incarnation is.
Emmanuel.
Exactly. That God came to earth. And therefore, this time of year, you can sing all the other worship songs all year long. This time of year, I think we should absolutely be in our churches noting the incarnation. It is the basis for our faith. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh. The incarnation is the basis of the Christian faith. The resurrection is the confirmation of it. It's what confirms that our assertion that God came in the flesh is true. That Jesus is God. Just wanted to make that point here. Thought at some point this week that I needed to say that here on the show.
It's not just a point, it's the point.
It is the point. It is literally the point to everything. Literally the point to everything. You guys remember that first... You might be too young, Aaron, to remember the first teaser poster for Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Do you remember it?
Not.
Little Anakin walking by the stone tablet, and there's a shadow of Darth Vader on it. One of the great movie posters of all time. Okay, I have it hanging in my man cave, right? What were you going to say?
Which is why everything that came after the poster was
should have just stopped after the poster.
So disappointing.
You're right. Okay, because that poster is pretty dope, man.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Okay. So a few years ago, Amy and I were on vacation somewhere and doing some shopping, and found a painting version of that for Christ, essentially, where you see.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, the cross.
You see a young child, Jesus, working in his father Joseph's carpentry shop.
Yep.
Okay, and the sun shines through the window, and you see the shadow of the cross there. And I just remembering that Phantom Menace poster from when we were younger. I bought that painting right away. It's hanging over the fireplace in my home year round as we speak. Okay, that's the incarnation is the basis for our faith. The resurrection is the confirmation of it. And so they're pointless. One is pointless without the other. They go together. So just let me get on my soapbox. In our churches this time of year, we should absolutely be celebrating the incarnation. You bet. Particularly because much of this culture is going to be humming tunes Hark the Herald Angels Sing, Joy to the World. These songs are all about the Incarnation. All right. Emmanuel, Mary, did you know? These songs are all about the Incarnation. They're going to be singing these tunes, humming these tunes. I mean, is there a better evangelistic opportunity than playing the same songs for them that they kind of already know, that already are also, by the way, very rich and deep in theology? Soapbox gone.
Amen. Kent Miller is next. Why are so many leaders in the Christian church afraid to lead where leadership is needed? Why will they not touch, much less outline, a biblical order of affection, address a real priority of benevolence, or explain how our natural relationships actually fit in to and create a complexity of charitable responsibilities which might extend far beyond just strictly shared ideology?
Excellent question. I even like the language and wording that you use there. Smart. But the answers are simple. How they get applied in each case, I'm not qualified to answer that. I don't know, every gutless pastor, their heart. Okay. But there's two answers. One, the lack of biblical worldview training, theological application, it's just beyond vapid or vapid out there. That's part of it. We just went through an entire generation. You know what? Let me make it more personal. The first church that we ever belonged to was one of these churches that was heavily influenced by Bill Hybel and Willow Creek and Rick Warren and Saddleback. And I didn't know what any of that meant, until after I got converted, and then I start looking into all this kind of stuff, right? And we were in our original small group, and we start taking seriously in our group the study of the Word. And the more you do that, the more it exposes the lack of the Word that is getting taught on Sunday mornings at the church we're going to. And so we invited over for dinner one night one of the pastors at this church to come to dinner with our small group. And instead of, just complaining and grousing and gossiping, we're like, let's just invite the pastor. We all know the guy, and let's, have a good dinner with him and just sit in a friendly setting and just ask some questions. There might be things we don't know and don't understand, right? So that's what we did. Okay. And one of the men in our group eventually, brought up, hey, here's some of the stuff we've been studying in our small group. And we were just wondering why this kind of stuff doesn't ever get discussed on Sundays. Part of the reason why is we want to make sure we're actually, we're just laymen. We're all just recent converts here. We want to make sure that, we're rightly dividing the word. So we're kind of looking for leadership. And then the other part of it is we kind of think maybe some of the rest of our fellow churchgoers here maybe need to hear some of the stuff that we've been studying, right? And I'll never forget this. He looked at us kind of puzzled, and then he said the following, and I quote, "We often get together as a staff and argue and debate with each other about how much of that stuff people really need to know. That's not your job." You know who that sounds like, by the way? That's a gatekeeper. That's not a minister. That's the media deciding which headlines we should even get to comment on, what news should even make it through an Overton window. That's not your job. Now, if I wanted to get hyper Protestant about this, I could have been like, I think you might have just undone the Protestant Reformation here in our family room, okay? But nevertheless, this is just kind of a universal thing. That's not your job to play gatekeeper. You don't stand between people and the gospel. You lead them to the gospel. You don't stand between people and the truth. You lead them there. You're not a go-between in terms of being a gatekeeper. You're a conduit for people to meet and get to the actual narrow gate themselves. So I think, there's a lot of that. Now, what's the context for, we debate and we often ask ourselves and debate one another as a staff, how much of that stuff people really need to know. Let me apply what that context means. It means how much of that stuff will actually get in the way of our church growth program? Can we still draw as big a crowds of people who just want their bellies rubbed and their ears tickled? Or do we start thinning out the herd here once we actually start teaching the Word of God? And that's one of the reasons why when I saw the Bonhoeffer movie last month, I said after I saw the movie, the line in that movie that did to me with the line in our movie, Nefarious, That's Why You're Losing, did to so many of you, is when Bonhoeffer stands up and says to his elder colleague, it's not about how many people are in the church, but why they're here. Why are they here? Why are they here? God looked at Gideon and said, that's too many people, that's too many people, that's too many people. That's just the right amount. Barely 100 people are sitting in an upper room in Jerusalem. They start the greatest religious movement in the history of the world. So it's about motivations more than it is mobilizations. So a lot of that is the corporatization of the church. And I mean, that's how a business thinks. A business thinks, well, what about my product do you need to know so that you'll buy it? And then what about the product that if you did know it, you wouldn't buy it, right? That's why the big pharma ads, it's always the really attractive people are taking the med and living great life. And then at the very end, all the disclaimers and FedEx man's voice at the, or at the end that you can't even keep up with, right? Same thing. That's how a business thinks. That's a corporatized church. That's not a spirit-filled church. So that's number one.
And you have consumers attending instead of saints or disciples.
Or disciples, correct. Yeah, you treat customers that way, not disciples. Okay. And then the other part of it is just sheer gutlessness. And the reality is there's not a lot of men in our culture that were raised with a good masculine role model in the home. And then on top of that, we are de-incentivizing masculinity systemically across the culture. And so on an institutional level, things that would have taken the place of that institutionally, which would have operated as some form of a surrogate for human failure, those institutions are all weaponized against their original foundings now in promoting that which caused the family to fail already. So you're not getting a lot of that either. And that's again why you have Moms for Liberty, because the dads just stay home. So each of your individual gutless church, those are the two reasons why it's gutless. Now, which of those reasons are more prevalent in your church? I don't know. You do. You go there. And it's probably a ratio of both. And that ratio varies from congregation to congregation. But that's the tumor that has metastasized in the American church right there.
All right, next up, switching gears, David Geiger says, how do you think Bill Belichick will do at North Carolina?
I think they've turned college football into the NFL. I think he'll do fine. I mean, it's a model he knows. There's free agency. Guys get paid. Guys are going to come in. I laugh when I hear people say, I just want to see Bill Belichick's reaction the first time a 19-year-old walks into his office and says, I should be getting paid more. Okay. Here he's already dealing with it from 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 28-year-olds, 31-year-olds. And in those cases, you could argue it's more annoying. Those are guys who are mature, have families. They should be more self-aware about their standing, let alone some 19-year-old kid. I think he'll do fine. I think it's that they made it look like the NFL. The biggest struggle for him is going to be the unrestricted free agency. That he has to. The part that will be fascinating for him is, can he truly go Patriot way when guys can just leave anytime they want? You see what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. All right. But in terms of the structure of what they've done to college football, it looks a lot like the sport that he mastered. Now, when we say mastered, he mastered it with Tom Brady. Do you know what Bill Belichick's lifetime career winning percentage is when he doesn't have Tom Brady as a starting quarterback?
Really bad.
457.
No, that's not really bad, but it's bad.
It's pretty mediocre. Yeah. 457. So now you still can't give all the credit to Brady. He gets, I think, the bulk of it. But someone still had to manage all those egos, still had to coach all those games, still had to run the salary cap in the team, and Belichick did all of that. Okay, so he is deserving of credit for all of the 6 Super Bowls that they won. But you also can't you don't win championships without a great quarterback play. You just don't. And he had the greatest of all time, and that's why his lifetime win percentage without Tom Brady is .457, and with him it's like .657 or something. So he'll need that. But structurally, I don't know, sport looks a lot like the one that he left. Well, didn't leave. They just didn't want him anymore.
All right, Donald Carpenter is next. What's your favorite Twilight Zone episode?
The William Shatner. Let me see which one that is so I can name it for you. Let me Google it up. William Shatner Twilight Zone scene. Nightmare at 20,000 feet is my favorite one. And this was... The Twilight Zone movie, by the way, is one of the hidden gems of the 1980s. The Twilight Zone movie is insanely good and has one of the great opening scenes of any thriller, suspense, horror film, because it's an anthology. So it encompasses all of those genres. The opening sequence between with Dan Aykroyd of the Twilight Zone movie is one of the great opening scenes in a genre film you will ever see. Want to see something really scary? It's great. Okay. That movie is sneaky good. It's really well done. And it did an updated version of this episode with John Lithgow in the William Shatner role. It's actually the closing episode of the Twilight Zone movie as they remade Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with John Lithgow. And that's really well done too. But the original with William Shatner, where he thinks there is some kind of creature out on the wing of the plane and causes a mass panic on this flight, is fantastic television. Fantastic.
All right, Heather Hannah Knopp with an interesting...
By the way, can I throw this in? Just as a fun fact? Okay. Because we got our first poster for the new Superman movie today. Did you guys see this?
I did.
The poster, it looks incredible. If they screw that up, I'm just going to tell you, sometime around July 12th, you're going to hear reports of Steve Deace on a water tower with a high-powered weapon. Okay, if they screw this one up. But that poster looks incredible. Now, why did I tie that into this? Because, like, the very first thing Richard Donner ever directed, or at least one of them was, that episode of The Twilight Zone. Okay? Terror at 20,000, or Nightmare at 20,000 feet. One of the first things ever directed by Richard Donner. Who made us believe a man could fly, originally? With Christopher Reeve. Richard Donner did. So... just thought I'd throw in that little fun fact there.
All right, Heather Hannah Knopp asks, what are some of the most interesting things you've learned from your Theology Question of the Day posts? Have any answers changed your perspective?
I would not say any answers have changed my perspective per se. That doesn't mean, by the way, I haven't found a lot of answers to be smart or intriguing. It's just a lot of times I've already kind of considered many of these positions. And a lot of times someone who says they've got a new thought or a new teaching is really just an old heretic with new branding. Okay. So I have been pleasantly surprised for the most part, how respectful the conversation has been. I mean, I have contemplated doing this for years, and I was just like, oh man. That's like, whose job is it to bring the cats to the Haitian barbecue in Springfield, right? Okay, I don't want to be a conduit for our people showing their rear end to unbelievers, right? Okay. But for the most part, these have been fairly respectful. I will tell you about this time last year, because I'd been contemplating doing this heading into 24, and then I nearly talked myself out of it, because this time last year, we have a tradition. We watch It's a Wonderful Life Christmas Eve at our home every year. Okay. And in the last several years now, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, I will live tweet our Christmas Eve viewing of It's a Wonderful Life. You guys know what I'm talking about, where I'm going to go with this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the scene where George Bailey is just seeing his younger brother, who's going to take over the savings and loan, so that he could finally go and live his dreams now. He put him off for years, all right, served during the war, kept the family business alive after his dad's sudden death, helped people build homes so they wouldn't lose their livelihoods to potter, okay? And he put off his life for like a decade. And it's now going to finally be his turn. And the brother comes home with a new wife and a job offer in Buffalo. And they're celebrating the new wife. And after the celebration and revelry is over, George finally contemplates the fact that I'm stuck here in Bedford Falls for the rest of my life. I'm never getting out. And his mom walks over and says, Mary's back from school, George. Why don't you call on Mary? I live tweeted the line, why don't you call on Mary? And then I just went on with the rest of the movie. Right? Yeah. I get up, I'm on Christmas vacation, man. I get up the next morning. There's like 3,000 mentions in my feed. And I'm like, what? I'm doing now what you do.
Welcome to my
Steve,
life.
what did you do, Steve?
Yeah.
What did you do? And I'm like, what did I do? What did I do? Did my account get hacked? What did I do? Okay, then on Christmas, I've got thousands of mentions. And it was, someone took the line, why don't you call on Mary? And turned it into a reference to a debate about Marianism, not knowing the context that I was live tweeting It's a Wonderful Life. And this led to literally thousands of spleen removing and opening comments going back and forth.
The context is clearly pagan idolatry, Steve.
Between Catholics and Protestants. And I could not even believe it. I'm like, I just was live tweeting It's a Wonderful Life, guys. So that made me think maybe we can't handle it. But for the most part, now, here's the thing I have tried to do. I've tried to ask questions as best I could that would avoid that level of low-lying fruit, or frame them in ways that would avoid that level of low-lying fruit. Does that make sense? Okay. So I've been pleasantly surprised that it's been fairly respectful. Now, understand my definition of respectful doesn't mean non-confrontational. No one's been mean. That's not what I mean by respectful. What I mean is that I'm not straw-manning your arguments. I'm not using ad hominem replies. You see what I'm saying?
Have you reported anybody to their employer, Steve?
No, I have. No, I have not. Doesn't mean I'm totally fine if you hate each other's views. All right? Catholics and Protestants killed each other for a lot less. Okay? But dang it, be respectful about it. Don't take people in the middle of slicing each other up. At least admit what each other believes first. That's how I would define respectful. All right? More in a moment. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. If you're tired of giving money to companies who hate you, unfortunately, you can't avoid that entirely. But one place where you entirely can is with your mobile phone. So make that switch today to our only American mobile phone provider here in America. That's Patriot Mobile, and they are believers in the same value system that you guys have, faith, family, and freedom. But that also means they believe in excellence. So they have an outstanding customer service team, U.S.-based, which means you can understand them. They give you all the same coverage that the big communist companies do, but you don't have to give your money directly to them anymore. And if you use my name, Steve, as your promo code to get you started, you can lead off here with a free month of service to get going at patriotmobile.com/Steve. So they'll customize it to whatever you or your family's needs are. That means if you want to upgrade your phone, you can. You want to keep it cool. You want to swap numbers, you can do that. Keep your number, you can do that too. All right, patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the offer code Steve for a free month of service to get you started. A free month of service at patriotmobile.com/Steve if you use the offer code Steve.
Steve, I've got a Christmas present for you from John Housen on Twitter. He said there was a third Rock from the Sun episode with Shatner and obviously Lithgow, who was its star. Shatner arrives on Earth, as he's an alien like Lithgow, and Lithgow comments that Shatner is late. Shatner says his flight was delayed because of a creature out on the wing.
Nice.
And Lithgow says, you saw it!
Nice. That is well played. I was not aware of that.
Neither was I.
That's very cool. I mean, it's a fantastic episode. And the Twilight Zone movie, guys, have you guys ever seen it?
Mm-mm. I don't think I'd even heard of it.
On your Christmas break, 19 days, you're going to thank me later. It's it's a great movie. The Twilight Zone movie is great. Great. Very underrated film, but it's great. All right, what's next for Ask Me Anything?
All right, we'll go to C.B. Betcher, who asks, what is the true origin of the song 12 Days of Christmas? Wikipedia, backed by Snopes, LOL, says the traditional words basically don't have a coded or hidden religious meaning. Catholic scholars disagree and say, in fact, that each named item is related to helping youngsters learn the catechism, i.e. 4 calling birds refers to the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Do you have an opinion or insight into this?
So my understanding, I've heard that Catholic origin of the song as well. So I've always, and it was also done at times, again, post-Reformation, when we're going back and forth between who's being persecuted by who's wearing the crown. So Catholics also kind of came up with the song and its symbolism in order to pass on the catechism to the next generation at times that it wasn't considered safe within Protestant-dominated cultures or countries to recite it or to teach it. So it's also entirely possible that the song has a random origin, but then was applied for the Catholic liturgy at the same time. So, but I've heard both of those exact same origins of the song.
And for many people, the answer to that question, what's at stake? Whether they ever listen to it again. Actually, your daughter asked the question, which song would we never want with us in a cell if we had to listen over and over again last week?
Yeah.
When I read this question, it would be that one. You know, I think it's Perry Como version, which is just, it's outstanding. But you listen to that once and how they harmonize it and everything, just brilliant, because there's work putting in to make that. Mm-hmm. But if you had to listen to it over and over and over again, that'd be rough, man.
It would be. Yeah, I don't deny that. I think, it's funny when people get into the origins of songs. One group that people think there's a lot of origins to their music that are unknown is the Beatles, for example. Strawberry Fields, a reference to, intravenous drug use. Really just Lennon looked out his window in a British apartment that he shared with Yoko at the time.
It's like your Cosmos Boys, the answer to everything at the end. Acid.
Yes. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds does not mean LSD. That's actually not what it means. And there's a lot of, and in fact, they got so tired at one point of people trying to appropriate meanings and origins to their songs that Lennon had read that there was a schoolmaster in London and she was using Beatles songs as curriculum for the kids and to decipher their hidden meaning and symbolism, okay? And so he wrote an entire song to troll this, all right, with a bunch of random statements and everything else. And, can you guess what the whole song is a troll? That's what I Am the Walrus is. The whole entire song is a troll. I mean, there wasn't code or hidden wording for any of that at all. It's just a series of random statements to troll people who are trying to find secret meanings within Beatles songs.
I know you're not a huge fan, but Dylan had this problem as well. I mean, he has had scripture. I mean, he's like Tolkien. He's got scripture is just throughout everything. And of course, the hippie movement, tried to claim him for their own. And he's not as bombastic as Lennon, like, I'm going to write it. But he just was like constantly like, no, not so much.
All right, next up, we will go to Alex Pfeiffer. Sorry, we already did Alex Pfeiffer. Esther Wolber. Do you have any expectation that Joel Osteen Netflix production of Mary would actually be biblically accurate? Do you plan to watch it?
So here's the thing. My understanding from reading what my buddy Dr. Jeremiah Johnston at Prestonwood Baptist said about the film. So I read what my buddy Dr. Jeremiah Johnston at Prestonwood Baptist wrote about it, and then we had a column at The Blaze about it as well. Do you remember when the Nativity came out in 2006? And there were actually a couple of Catholic priests that were upset about the film because they thought it took a very Protestant lean on Mary. Do you remember this?
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
but interesting.
Yeah, there were some articles about that. I remember reading at the time. So this film seems to take an extreme, a pretty hardcore, even though it's executive produced by Osteen. From what I read from Jeremiah and the column we wrote about at The Blaze, it seems to take a very Catholic view of her. Perpetually sinless kind of thing. That wouldn't necessarily bother me at all. I'm aware that this view exists. The reason why I'm probably not going to watch it, though, is the other stuff that I read about it. The whole Mary as girl boss and Joseph retconned as an action hero. It gets rid of it changes the biblical text apparently in areas where it doesn't have to. They don't go to Bethlehem for a census, but to see his family. I mean, what would be the point of that? Why change that? Right? I mean, this isn't arguments over The Chosen, which is trying to figure out how to come up with an expositional narrative surrounding the Gospels that often don't offer us expositional narratives. And so can you go too far in providing that expositional narrative to the point that you delete the scripture itself? I faced this challenge writing a nefarious plot I wanted this demon to provide an expositional narrative, but I also didn't want to put myself in the position of a scripture writer and undermine the text at the same time. And so I understand those boundaries. I faced them myself as a writer. That's the tension that's within the Chosen all of the time. In this case, we're just changing things that there's no point in changing. And so if you're changing that, then I'm asking myself, well, what else are we changing? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's kind of a benign thing, all right, that he was going there for the census, for the tax census, right? That's kind of a benign thing. We're not making some kind of, are we? That needs to be changed. I'm just going there to see my family. I don't know. So I'm probably out on it, okay, based on some of the other story narrative choices, okay, that are within that story. So, for example, like I love Jesus of Nazareth, which was a miniseries produced in the late 70s. That if you've never watched it is absolutely fantastic. And is it who's the famous Italian director? It's either Zeffirelli or Fellini that did that miniseries.
I think it's Zeffirelli, isn't it?
Okay, I think it's Zeffirelli. If you watch this, the blue-eyed Jesus right out of the Catholic iconography, I mean, this film is exceedingly Catholic, or the miniseries is exceedingly Catholic in its presentation in terms of the narrative, the way that the slant that it takes on the biblical narrative. I also think it is beyond incredible, moving, powerful, and I would highly recommend watching it. All right, so I wouldn't let the Catholic view of Mary's role here in this process deter me from seeing it. It's the other narrative choices here that were made that probably are going to push me off of seeing it. I may indulge it while I'm home for 19 days looking for stuff to do, but there were some things I read about the way that the story is presented that I was not a fan of.
Here's the thing I find remarkable about it. Nobody, unless I'm missing it, nobody's claiming it, good or bad.
And it's got, even though it's got Smiling Joel's name badge on it.
But the pagans.
That's a good point.
Aren't claiming it. The leftists aren't claiming it.
Yeah.
Nobody is like.
Is this being heavily promoted in your Catholic circles at all?
No, nobody.
No. Yeah. So what is that? What does that tell you? Yeah. So. All right, before we get to some more questions, we'll do a rapid fire round here after I talk about our friends over at PREBORN this Christmas. Speaking of Mary, as we celebrate the gift of life, a mom with an unplanned pregnancy and a baby inside of her wondering, what does the future hold for me? Lots of women go through this every day. We're there to try to help those women. First of all, we want to persuade them from making a choice that will literally stain their own souls. And there are women sometimes who never recover from the stain of abortion because they don't ever seek out the forgiveness and redemption that Christ offers. And they let that, in turn, warp their worldview and belief system instead. We just saw that play out in this last election cycle, right? So we want to reach those moms before they make that mistake. We want to save their babies so that those moms realize that's the greatest mistake they've ever made, actually. And my mom would tell you today, after considering aborting me 51 years later, I'm the best mistake she ever made. At PREBORN, we want to make more stories like that. You guys have been so generous in helping that to happen. We have partnered with them the last few years. We estimate conservatively we've saved tens of thousands of babies with our generosity here from you. Via the Blaze. So let's keep that going. If you're thinking of your year-end gift, few causes are more worthy than our friends over at PREBORN. Go to preborn.com/Steve. Make that tax-deductible donation today. Everything they do for the baby and her mama, everything they do is free, although none of it is actually free. We cover those costs with your help. So let's keep that going. Preborn.com/Steve. Again, go to preborn.com/Steve.
Let's see. We'll go to Carrie O'Quinn, who asks, what is Tucker Carlson doing with or for President Trump's administration?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I think he is clearly wielding influence in terms of some of the personnel decisions, like J.D. Vance is running mate. In fact, I know for a fact that's the case. What'll happen once we get into actual governing? I don't know Susie Wiles at all from what I've seen of her and have heard of her. I suspect she's going to be running a pretty tight ship. And with the limitations on private communications for presidents, it's really hard for Tucker or anybody that has Trump's cell phone number just to send the president a text. You see what I'm saying? That you can do right now when he's a candidate, you know? So if I had to guess, a lot of that influence will probably be wielded outside in more than inside out, meaning, you know, perhaps Tucker will view himself, if he thinks like Trump is getting off course or needs to be alerted to something, he's got a massive platform by which to highlight that message. If I had to guess, at least initially in the Trump era, that's what that relationship will be. And then I think if it's successful, you'll continue to see Susie get earn the opportunity to run a tight ship. And if it's not successful, I think, like we've seen with Trump before, he's not opposed to making personnel changes the minute he thinks that things aren't going the direction that he wants them to.
Matt Cooper wants to know, will you come to my house and play strategy board games for New Year's? I want to see how your mind works outside of politics and theology.
Do you?
Are you sure? Are you sure about that? Because I am, I'm pretty competitive, and
we've seen it up close.
Yeah, I'm not.
Take it from experience, and
I don't know that it's good for the brand. I mean, you're talking to a guy who made his kids cry playing Candyland and Chutes and Ladders, and that's not even a lie. I mean, Anna wanted to play wiffle ball in the backyard. I hit every ball over the fence. I made her good at every single time. That's what she get me out. Okay. Hey, I know you're crying. If you wanted to stop, you have to get me out. Catch it then, you know? I mean, that's just... yeah. So...
Merry Christmas.
Indeed. Catch the ball, kid! I'm not sure it's good for the brand for that to happen. I appreciate the invite, but... let's just say we don't have a lot of game nights as a family. And when we do play games, it's often like a charades kind of a thing or a fun thing. It's not anything where, because my competitive nature is also rubbed off on the kids, particularly my oldest, all right, with Anna. So we don't do Stratego or Risk or Monopoly, you know, very often as a family. Those things just, people die. Yeah, people die. Yeah, so. Danger, Will Robinson. No, you don't want the smoke. You don't. No.
I've been informed we were live the entire time.
Were we?
Yeah. So I think what happened is the roofing company next door to us installed like a microwave or something probably next door.
And that blew the fuse?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that was fun.
That was fun.
Good thing we didn't say anything naughty.
That is a good thing we didn't say anything. The good thing about having a show where we don't hold ourselves back all that often is it's rare that we have to be. There are some times I'll say, hey, we need to talk about something. I want to make sure we're off the air. But that happens maybe like once a month at the most. Most of the time we just turn the mics on here and just spill our guts for better or for worse, like I just did about my family's dark history with strategic board games. Yes, indeed, it's well known and tragic, indeed. All right, we're back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.